proper playlist and giving it a thumbnail. After that, I will get started with the show. It's another late night episode of Esoteric Agenda. So let me go ahead, get everything set up. I had a pretty strange day, so I'm running a little bit late on everything. Okay, so here we go. So let me go ahead and check the audio, make sure everything sounds good. Everything sounds pretty decent. I'm having some issues with background audio at the moment, but it should be handled here before long. Okay, so let's get on with it. Okay, so I'm going to do my countdown and we will get started with the 6th episode. I'm amazed it's already at episode 6. I don't usually enjoy episodes this much of my streams. Doesn't seem like it's already at episode 6, but I guess it is. So let me do my countdown and then I will start. 3, 2, 1, now. Hello everybody and welcome back to the wonderful world of weirdness. This is another episode of Esoteric Agenda. I will be your host, Roger Hanson, and I hope that you enjoy this episode. Tonight we are going to get in or go further with what I was talking about when it comes to magic and the ancient world. There's a line that's between religion, magic, and ritual. And with that, we have to kind of understand it. I was talking about Sub Rosa, and I also am going to introduce some concepts that go all the way back to the Mesopotamians too with their rituals. This is going to go into the more ancient concepts of magic, alchemy, and things of that nature. So with that, all I can say now is sit back and enjoy the show. Across the ancient world, the line between religion, magic, and ritual was fluid and deeply interwoven. Two major cultural strands that express this dynamic with striking intensity express the two major cultural strands that express this dynamic with striking intensity were the Mesopotamian ritual specialists, especially the exorcist priests known as the Ashipu, and the initiates of Greco-Roman mystery cults, such as those dedicated to Dionysus, Demeter, Isis, and Mithras. Although separated by geography and language, their practices reveal remarkable structural and symbolic similarities. These traditions centered around secrecy, purification, transformation, and the controlled transmission of divine knowledge. The parallels between them shed light on how ancient humans sought divine protection, sacred insight, and transformation through carefully guarded ritual systems. One of the most fundamental similarities between Mesopotamian ritual specialists and mystery cult initiates lies in their emphasis on purification. In Mesopotamia, especially in the anti-witchcraft ritual series called Maklu. A final ceremonial act involved the afflicted person undergo ritual washing at dawn. The priest would utter a binding incantation that reinforced the identity of the initiate and cloaked them in protective language, ending with the phrase, "May nobody know, may nobody know you." This linguistic barrier of concealment served as both a spiritual and magical shield. Similarly, in the Eleusinian mysteries, the cult of Isis, and other mystery religions, purification rites were performed before any revelation of deeper truths. Participants were washed in rivers or sprinkled with sacred water as part of a symbolic preparation for entering the realm of hidden wisdom. In both systems, this cleansing marked a threshold between the profane world and the sacred realm. The use of hidden knowledge, powerful names, and secret incantations formed another strong link. The Ashipu were masters of magical speech. Their incantations invoked divine powers and bound demonic forces, often using coded language and secretive formulations meant to be inaccessible to outsiders. In the Maklu series, the ritual included spoken formulas addressed to Shamash and Nusku, framed in ways that affirmed cosmic order and personal protection. Greco-Roman mystery traditions likewise held their hymns and chants in secret. Only those who had been ritually initiated were permitted to hear or speak them. Orphic hymns and the sacred verses of the Sibylline books carried hidden meaning only the initiated were taught to interpret. The use of sacred, often nonsensical sounding words in mystery rituals functioned as a kind of magical speech, echoing the Mesopotamian use of protective utterance. Closely tied to these verbal protections was the ritual drama of descent into darkness and symbolic rebirth. In Mesopotamia, while the theme was more implicit, the ritual did often involve symbolic contact with the underworld. Texts like the Adapa myth suggest that wisdom and immortality were mediated through divine judgment, often dramatized through symbolic journeys. In Greco-Roman mystery cults, this motif was explicit. The telestorian at Ulysses was a dark chamber where initiates passed through a night of symbolic death before being reborn into illumination. The cult of Isis, as described by Aquilius's novel, culminated in a dramatic transformation of the initiate, who described a descent, a divine revelation, and rebirth as a devotee. These experiences mirror the Mesopotamian framework of ritualized passage through danger into restoration. Another compelling point of similarity lies in the consecration and animation of sacred objects. In Mesopotamia, a series of rituals known as Mispi and Pitpi were performed to animate statues of deities, transforming lifeless clay or stone into vessels of divine presence. The rituals involved whispering into the statue's ear, bathing it, and declaring it alive through secret formulas. Greco-Roman mystery cults had their own forms of sacred objects. The sistrum of the Isis cult, the sacred torches of Demeter, or the Turoctonic imagery of Mithraism. These objects were hidden, revealed only during initiatory rites, and considered powerful conduits for divine presence. The careful ritualized handling of these items underscores a shared sense of sanctity and spiritual charge that both cultures attached to material forms. Protective symbolism was present in both cultures through objects and icons. In Mesopotamian, apotropaic figures like the Apkallu were buried beneath buildings or placed at thresholds to ward off spiritual threats. The Ashipu played a central role in crafting and empowering these protective figures. Likewise, mystery cults employed visual symbols such as the rose, crescent moons, or hidden images that carried layers of meaning. These symbols often marked a space as sacred or guarded. The common motif of guarding knowledge in sacred spaces through symbols, statues, and sacred geometry reflects a shared cosmological logic in both traditions. A deep sense of secrecy governed both systems. The Ashipu maintained ritual confidentiality, holding incantations and divine names in strict oral tradition. Likewise, initiates into Greco-Roman mysteries swore oaths to keep silent about what they had seen and heard. The Latin phrase "sub rosa", meaning "under the rose", later came to symbolize this ancient principle of sacred secrecy. Whether invoked in the Mesopotamian formula, "May nobody know you", or sealed through Greek and Roman oaths, the act of withholding sacred knowledge from the uninitiated was central to both systems. It served not just as a ritual boundary, but also as a protective mechanism that preserved the power of the ritual itself. These symbolic and ritual parallels reflect a shared belief in the transformative powers of sacred practice. Whether it was the Mesopotamian patient seeking deliverance from a curse, or the Greco-Roman initiate seeking enlightenment and rebirth, both traditions viewed ritual as a means of realignment with cosmic forces. This realignment was often achieved through patterned actions, symbolic speech, sacred objects, and a journey through liminal space. Both traditions demanded ritual purity, silence, and faith in the unseen mechanisms of the divine order. Even the physical arrangement of sacred spaces revealed similar principles. Mesopotamian temples were constructed with multiple rooms, some of which were accessible only to priests. Sacred statues were hidden from public view and treated as living beings. Mystery cult sanctuaries followed similar architectural logic. At Eleusis, only initiates could enter the telesterion in the inner sanctum. of Mithraic caves featured an altar or bull slaying scene only visible after a symbolic journey through the darkened space. The spatial metaphor of moving from outer to inner sanctum mirrored the initiate's spiritual journey from ignorance to enlightenment. In addition to these architectural and ritual practices, the psychological transformation of the participant was also key. Both systems required submission, emotional openness, and often a symbolic shedding of identity. In Maklu, the afflicted person had to be made ritually passive so that divine power could realign them. In mystery cults, initiates often describe their experience as one of profound awe, terror, and illumination. The Babylonian star catalogues represent one of the oldest and most sophisticated systems of astronomical observation in human history. These texts, primarily compiled during the late second and first millennia BCE, reflect a deeply interwoven relationship between the movements of celestial bodies and the interpretation of omens. Rather than being purely scientific, Babylonian astronomy was intrinsically connected to divination, statecraft, ritual timing, and theological concerns. At the heart of this system was the conviction that the heavens were a canvas of divine communication, where every planetary motion, stellar appearance, and eclipse conveyed messages from the gods to those wise enough to interpret them. One of the foundational documents of Babylonian star lore is the Mal-Apin, a comprehensive compendium of star lists and astronomical observations, likely compiled around 1000 BCE, but based on older traditions. The name Mal-Apin means the plow star, referring to the constellation Triangulum, one of the first listed in the catalog. It laid out a complex system of fixed stars organized according to rising and setting times, heliacal risings, and seasonal associations. These stars were divided into three paths or zones in the sky: the path of Enlil, the northern sky; the path of Anu, equatorial; and the path of Ea, the southern sky. These divisions had religious significance and helped structure the Babylonian calendar. Unlike modern astronomy, the purpose of these catalogues was not detached observations, but interpretation. Babylonians believed celestial patterns were omens, signals sent by divine forces about the fate of kings, cities, or entire nations. This gave rise to a vast body of text known as Enuma Anu Enlil, a massive series of omen compendiums, comprising over 70 tablets. These covered planetary appearances, eclipses, conjunctions, and more. For example, one entry might read, "If Jupiter appears bright in the month of Nisanu, there will be abundance in the land." Another might warn, "If the moon is eclipsed on the 14th day and Mars stands in front of it, there will be war in the land. Eclipses were of particular importance in Babylonian divination because they were rare, dramatic, and often unpredictable. They were seen as powerful omens. A lunar eclipse might indicate the death of a king, while a solar eclipse might predict invasion or famine. Babylonian scholars developed detailed methods for predicting eclipses using cyclical patterns such as the Saros cycle. They also performed apotropaic rituals to avert the perceived dangers of those celestial events, often involving substitute kings or elaborate rites to absorb the curse and protect the real monarch. Planetary motion was another major source of omens. Each planet was associated with a specific deity. Jupiter with Marduk, Venus with Ishtar, Saturn with Ninurta, Mars with Nergal, and Mercury with Nabu. Their movements across constellations and their visibility cycles were tracked with precision. The planet Venus, for instance, was followed closely in its phases of appearance as the morning and evening star. Its heliacal rising, when it first became visible in the dawn sky, was interpreted as a signal of fertility, renewal, or warfare, depending on the context. The Venus tablet of Amisaduga, dating to the 17th century BCE, records such appearances over a 21-year period, correlating them with events of national importance. Another key practice was the use of conjunctions. When two celestial bodies appeared close together in the sky, these were interpreted through analogical reasoning and historical precedent. If Mars and Saturn appeared in close proximity in the constellation Leo, for instance, and the pattern had once preceded a plague, it might be read as an omen of disease recurring. The Babylonians did not interpret omens randomly. They used a method called summa itzbu, meaning if this, then that, based on earlier records. This empirical tradition made Babylonian divination a cumulative science rooted in millennia of observations. Meteorological and atmospheric phenomena were also incorporated into their own literature. Red clouds, halos around the moon, sudden storms, or unusual winds were all cataloged as signs. While not technically part of the star catalogs, these observations were often interpreted in tandem with celestial data. For instance, if Venus rose brightly during a period of heavy rains, it might signal prosperity, whereas a dim Venus during a dust storm could suggest divine disfavor. The purpose of the Babylonian star catalogs and their accompanying omen text was fundamentally practical and theological. Priests and scholars in temples like those in Babylon, Sippar, and Uruk used them to advise kings, schedule temple rituals, and determine the outcome or the outcomes of wars, harvests, or epidemics. They developed methods of calculating planetary periods, which in turn fed into broader cosmological ideas about order, chaos, and divine will. The heavens were not neutral or abstract in Babylonian thought. They were a living tablet written by the gods, and only through ritual purity, training, and interpretive skill could one hope to decipher them. The scribes and diviners who managed this knowledge were known as Tipsar Enuma Anu Enlil, or scribes of the series Enuma Anu Enlil. These elite specialists held high status at court and in the temple, and they formed one of the earliest institutionalized scientific communities. Their work combined astronomical observations with theological interpretation and ritual performance. The accuracy and continuity of their records laid the foundation for later Hellenistic astronomy and astrology, including the works of Hipparchus and Ptolemy, who adopted and adapted Babylonian methods. The ancient world teemed with layers of divine meaning, concealed beneath the visible surface of its myths, rituals, and esoteric practices. Embedded within the fragments of Greek magical papyri, particularly the segment known as PGM 4.1872 through 1927, is a deeply symbolic text that encapsulates key mystical themes present in the fusion of Hellenistic, Egyptian, and Near East spiritual traditions. These themes are not isolated threads, but interwoven strands of a larger spiritual fabric. They reflect cosmic correspondence, rituals of purification and divine ascent, magical utterances as a sacred tool, and the syncretic transformation of the practitioner into something more than human. The principle of cosmic correspondence lies at the heart of these rituals. It suggests that the universe operates as a vast web of interlinked forces, where divine order is mirrored in multiple levels of being. The ancient magician did not merely recite hymns. He aligned himself with the rhythms of the stars, the breath of the heavens, and the pulse of divine will. The invocation to the solar deity in this spell calls upon the ruler of the zodiac and planetary spheres. The god is described as seated upon the lotus, radiating across the cosmos, with guardians encircling his throne. These elements are not ornamental. Each reflect a greater truth, that the heavens govern the earth, and that through precise ritual, the human soul can momentarily harmonize with celestial order. Ritual purification is central to this process. Before one could invoke the divine or hope to ascend spiritually, the body and soul had to be purified. The text describes preparation rites involving silence, timing, and sacred breath. There are instructions for the preparation of herbs and offerings, often tied to solar alignments. This emphasis on cleansing echoes rites performed by initiates in mystery cults, especially those dedicated to divine feminine figures such as Magna Mater or Aphrodite in her esoteric forms. In those traditions, the initiate sought to rid themselves of earthly impurities to access the divine realm. The same is true here. To invoke the radiant being enthroned on the lotus is to engage in a sacred labor. The rite is not just verbal, it is an embodied spiritual transformation. The voices uttered during such invocations are not ordinary speech. The vocus magicae, the magical words embedded in the spell, are composed of syllables that appear nonsensical to modern readers, but held power meaning no pow, but held powerful meaning through their sound and rhythm. These phrases reflected deeper understanding that speech was not merely symbolic but energetic. In both Egyptian and Semitic traditions, the act of speaking could create or alter reality. This idea survives in the spell's long invocations, where the god is named through string of divine syllables. These words are not translations of deities' names, but attempts to vibrate in harmony with divine frequencies. The practitioner did not need to understand them intellectually, only to intone them with precision and reverence. Such utterances are preserved across many ancient traditions. In Egyptian temple rites, priests invoked gods using sacred names preserved through oral lineage. In Hebrew and Aramaic mysticism, divine names were shielded from the uninitiated, only pronounced by the elect. The vocus magicae found in the PGM are the residue of these traditions, filtered through Hellenistic cosmopolitanism, cosmopolitanism, cosmopolitanism. It's a big word. Cosmopolitanism, filtered through Hellenistic cosmopolitanism. They represent the brief that divine sound is a no. They represent the brief that divine sound is a force in itself, a key to the structure of creation, a spark of the first breath uttered by the God who called the world into being. The spell does not simply aim to bring divine presence into the room. It is also a tool of self-transformation. The magician, through this invocation, becomes the mirror of the God he calls. This theme is familiar to initiates of mystery cults, especially those of Attis and Cybele, or later Hermetic teachings that describe the soul's ascent through planetary spheres. The operator is not merely supplicating the god, but reshaping their own essence to become godlike. By invoking the solar deity In such rich symbolic terms, the magician invokes not only divine light, but divine mind, divine power, and divine authority. Syncretism plays a powerful role in this transformation. The solar god of this spell is not merely Helios or Apollo, he is also the Egyptian Ra, the radiant eye of Horus, and a deity imbued with elements from Chaldean, Phoenician, and Babylonian cosmology. His throne upon the lotus recalls images not only from Egyptian temple carvings, but from mystery cults, where the divine sits above the world encircled by guardians or wheels of fire. The 16 giants who flank him echo the daemonic protectors found in both Hellenistic astronomy and Near Eastern divine courts. Through this syncretism, the practitioner assesses a deity who is universal, archetypal, archetyp, archetypal, and capable of transforming the initiate across boundaries of culture and language. The process of divine ascent implies in this spell reflects beliefs common to both mystery initiates and early alchemists. Astonis, the legendary Persian magus, described the soul's transformation through stages of purification, spiritual contemplation, and the alignment of inner matter with divine fire. That same structure is present in this spell. The invocation begins with words of praise and purification, ascends through complex names and magical syllables, and culminates in a vision of the enthroned God. This arc mirrors the ascent of the soul described in Hermetic and Gnostic literature, where each stage corresponds to a layer of heaven or a trial to be overcome. The enthronement of the god on a lotus is particularly symbolic. The lotus in Egyptian tradition represents rebirth and divine emergence. In esoteric thought, it is often a symbol of the soul's unfolding. Here, it becomes the very seat of divine presence, suggesting that the god emerges from the hidden depths, just as the initiate must rise from ignorance to illumination. This symbolism continues the connection to traditions where sacred plants, the pine of Attis, the rose of secrecy, the black stone of the Magna Mater, encode the mysteries of transformation in vegetal form. The secrecy surrounding this spell and spells like it reinforce the sacred boundary between the initiate, the initiated, and the profane. In many cultures, the true names of gods were not spoken publicly. Silence itself was part of the ritual. It was believed that divine truths could only be transmitted under the veil of allegory or preserved through hidden utterance. This echoes the roots of the sub rosa concept, where knowledge is shielded by symbolic layers, just as the rose hides its center. In the mystery traditions we have examined, silence was often maintained not only out of fear but reverence. That same respect saturates this spell, which is not meant to be shared but embodied. Even the reference to divine guardians, thrones, and heavenly orders parallel what we know of Gnostic and Neoplatonic structures of the divine world. The god is not a singular being in isolation, but part of a celestial system, attended by powers who maintain the balance of the cosmos. The initiate who invokes him seeks to join that order, not in body, but in consciousness. He becomes part of the solar current, part of the divine pattern. The ancient world preserved a rich tapestry of magical, spiritual, and ritual knowledge through texts like the Greek magical papyri. Among these, a particular striking example involves a necromantic ritual found within the fourth papyrus, in which the practitioner attempts to contact a dead spirit during sleep. This complex rite reflects a synthesis of Egyptian, Greek, and Semitic elements and reveals deep layers of esoteric thought, spiritual mechanics, and cosmological symbolism. It is more than a magical procedure. It is a meditation on death, contact with the unseen, and the transformative power of ritual. The rite begins with the preparation of a plant called Aax, AAX. Though its precise botanical identity remains uncertain, the ox leaf was evidently considered sacred, or at least spiritually conductive. The magician is instructed to paint a figure of a goddess onto this leaf using a particular black ink that has been prepared or revealed through earlier ritual processes. This act of painting is not merely decorative. It constitutes the creation of a spiritual icon, a focus through which divine energies are to be channeled. Within the leaf is drawn a circle, and within that circle the goddess is painted. The circle, as in many traditions, serves as a boundary between worlds. It is a liminal space that both protects and empowers. It is within this circle that the goddess is not only honored but evoked as a spiritual force. The instructions then direct the magician to wreathe the summoned spirit with black ivy. Ivy, in ancient symbolism, was associated with Dionysian cults and often used in rites of ecstatic transformation, death, and rebirth. Black ivy specifically indicates a chthonic aspect, the color black associated with the underworld, mourning, and hidden mysteries. Marks the rite as one dealing with powers below the earth. To read the spirit is to symbolically bind it within the rite, giving it shape and ceremonial containment. It is an act of both welcome and control. The spirit is being honored, invoked, and simultaneously placed within the magician's power. At the heart of the rite is the expectation that the spirit will appear during sleep. This is known in ancient traditions as dream incubation. The practitioner does not seek to behold the spirit in the waking world, but rather within the sacred space of sleep. This is a traditional no, this is a tradition found in temples dedicated to Asclepius, the mystery religions, and in the personal practices of solitary mystics. Sleep is a doorway. The boundaries between the worlds are thinnest when the senses are stilled and the conscious mind is quiet. Within this state, the spirit is summoned to appear and to speak. The magician is instructed to tell the spirit what task is required, establishing a ritual contract through this dream encounter. The incantation that follows includes phrases like Phobal, Twathi, Aldi, Mingorithi, and others. These are not linguistic artifacts with fixed meaning in any known language. They are vocus magicae, magical utterances designed not to be translated, but to be spoken aloud with force and precision. Their power lies in sound, rhythm, and intention. They are constructed syllables, sometimes drawn from Egyptian, Hebrew, or Aramaic roots, sometimes purely invented, that functions as sacred keys. These keys are believed to vibrate with divine or demonic energy, compelling the unseen forces to appear, to obey, or to enact the will of the magician. The nature of these utterances reflects a philosophy of speech that goes beyond symbolism. In these traditions, the spoken word was not just a sign, but a force. To speak a word was to bring its reality into being. The uttered name of a god could call forth their essence. The repetition of sacred syllables could bridge the gap between matter and spirit. In this way, the vocis magicae serves as a bridge between human speech and divine language, between thought and manifestation. The rite continues with the invocation of a cosmic principle known as the destiny of destinies. This phrase is not a reference to fate in the mundane sense, but to a higher metaphysical order. It is the source from which all lesser fates derive. To swear by the destiny of destinies is to evoke the highest spiritual law, a truth that even gods and spirits cannot defy. By evoking this principle, the magician seeks to bind the spirit with a force greater than any individual will. The spirit must obey not only out of fear, but out of recognition of divine order. This reflects a belief that the universe is not chaotic but ordered, and that this order can be invoked to command obedience from even the most reluctant entities. After securing the agreement of the spirit, the magician confirms the pact with the phrase, "I agree to the act of service for me." This is a ritual contract, a moment in which the magician and the spirit are linked by mutual obligation. But the rite does not rely only on consent. A final clause is included, threatening the spirit with further punishment if it refuses to comply. This reveals the precarious balance of power in necromantic rituals. The magician is not invoking a benign angel, but a potentially dangerous force. The rite is structured to control, to command, and to protect the practitioner from harm. All of these components work together to create a moment of contact between the human and the spiritual worlds. The ritual is not just a formula, it is a journey of transformation. The magician prepares sacred materials, creates symbolic images, invokes divine language, and seeks contact through altered states of consciousness. Each step is a descent into a mystery, a layering of meaning, a movement from the visible to the invisible. The necromantic rite also reflects the syncretic nature of the magical papyri. Egyptian themes are present in the use of sacred plants, divine names, and cosmological ordering. Greek elements appear in the artistic depiction of deities and the reliance on philosophical concepts of destiny and logos. Semitic influences can be traced in the structure of the oath and the linguistic form of the voces magicae. This is not the magic of a single culture, but the woven tapestry of a world in which traditions met, merged, and became something new. It is important to understand that this ritual was not superstition. To the ancient practitioner, it was science of the spirit and empirical art grounded in cosmology, metaphysics, and personal transformation. The use of dream, sound, plant, image, and command were all tools in the magician's arsenal. They were methods for opening the gates between the worlds and bringing about real change in the life of the practitioner. This ritual also echoes many other mystery practices. The black ivy recalls the rites of Dionysus, where the initiate died to their old self and was reborn in divine ecstasy. The magical circle and the invocation of the goddess mirror the temple rites of Magna Mater, where sacred images were invoked to presence the divine. The dream incubation and visionary contact resemble the auricular rites of Apollo and the prophetic practices of early Christian mystics. In each case, the core theme is the same: the human soul seeking to touch the divine, the seen world intersecting with the unseen. Within the traditions of the Greek magical papyri, a fascinating and often overlooked dimension of necromantic rituals is the concept of chastisement. These are not merely symbolic warnings or abstract metaphors. Instead, chastisements are considered active and potent mechanisms of magical enforcement. They represent the practitioner's ability to compel obedience from spiritual entities, particularly the spirits of the dead or demonic intelligence, by evoking a real imminent threat of punishment. To fully understand this aspect of the magical text, one must first grasp the worldview that gives rise to such concepts. In the cosmology expressed through the magical papyri, the universe is structured in layered realms, each inhabited by its own kind of beings. Gods reside in the upper heavens, planetary spirits and celestial demons operate in the middle spheres, while chthonic forces in the souls of the dead dwell in the underworld or beneath the earth. Human beings, though seemingly mortal and limited, were thought to possess the power to contact, influence, and command these beings through specific ritual practices. This power was not innate; it had to be earned through initiation, ritual purity, proper preparation, and the knowledge of sacred names, symbols, and formulas. When a magician engages in necromantic rite, such as summoning a spirit in a dream, they are not simply calling upon a friendly or benign presence. These spirits, especially if unburied or restless, could be volatile, confused, or hostile. To secure cooperation, the magician would use a combination of invocation, symbolic offerings, and often threats. The threat of chastisement thus appears as an essential safeguard and leverage mechanism. It ensures that the spirit understands the consequence of disobedience, not only in terms of being dismissed, but in terms of suffering magical torment. Chastisement could be no could ta- Chastisement could take many forms depending on the tradition, purpose, and spiritual being involved. They could be verbal, inscribed, material, or astral. Verbal chastisements often appear in the form of oaths or spells that promise retribution. This might involve calling down a higher authority, such as the Destiny of Destinies or the Supreme Ruler of all, to enforce divine punishment. In some cases, the magician would swear by the name of the cosmic order itself, suggesting that the spirit would suffer according to the laws that bind all beings. Material chastisement might include the use of effigies, wax figures, or inscribed tablets. These items could be ritually manipulated, burned, pierced, or drowned to inflict sympathetic harm on the disobedient spirit. In essence, they functioned as magical proxies, tools through which the practitioner could project suffering into the spiritual realm. The symbolic destruction of an image inscribed with the spirit's name or sigil was believed to cause real distress to the entity, whether through pain, banishment, or binding. Astral chastisements are more abstract but deeply significant. These involve the manipulation of spiritual forces through vocalization of vocus magicae, or sacred utterances, which are not meaningful in the linguistic sense, but are said to have vibratory and spiritual potency. When spoken in a specific rhythm and tone, these utterances could pierce the veil between worlds and act upon the soul or essence of the summoned entity. If the spirit failed to comply, the utterance could be used in a different mode, no longer inviting or petitioning, but commanding, banishing, or tormenting. The notion of chastisement also implies that the magician has the moral and metaphysical authority to enact such punishment. This authority is not assumed lightly. It is derived through invocation of cosmical law, personal purity, and ritual propriety. In this regard, the practitioner must first align themselves with the higher principles of the universe. Only then can they act as an enforcer of those principles. It is not unlike a priest performing an exorcism. Power does not come from the individual, but from the divine order they represent and channel. In several spells throughout the Greek magical papyri, chastisements are mentioned near the end of the invocations. This is not accidental. The structure of the spell often mirrors a progression from welcome to command, from gentle petition to authoritative demand. The magician begins by honoring the spirit, praising its power, and inviting it to appear. If the spirit complies, the rite concludes harmoniously. But if resistance is sensed or anticipated, the magician moves into the language of coercion, invoking chastisement as the final step. For example, in Papyri Graecae Magicae, Book 4, there is a spell in which the magician states that if the spirit does not come and perform its services, it will suffer under the rule of the destiny of destinies. In its essence, will be subjected to torment. Here the spell does not elaborate on the physical or emotional dimensions of the torment, but in the magical logic of the time, even the suggestion of being cut off from the natural cosmic order was a grave punishment. Spirits feared oblivion, fragmentation, and perpetual wandering. To be denied rest or transformation was equivalent to a kind of eternal exile. The invocation of chastisement also serves a psychological purpose. It affirms the magician's own role as the dominant force in the ritual. In rites that deal with death and unseen powers, fear and uncertainty are ever present. By asserting control through threat of punishment, the magician reclaims agency. This is not simply manipulation. It is a statement of power, a declaration that the magician operates within the rules of a larger system and is entitled to enforce its laws. In the broader context of ancient magical practices, chastisement can be seen as analogues to legal penalties in human society. Just as kings or judges wield the power to punish criminals, to uphold social order, the magician wields chastisement to uphold spiritual order. The magician becomes a judge, a priest, and an enforcer, tasked with ensuring that the divine law is carried out even in the invisible realms. One can also view chastisement as initiatory tools. In some traditions, spirits or demons are not merely punished for disobedience, but transformed by the experience. The pain or disorientation caused by the chastisement is not vindictive. It is purifying. It prepares the spirit for a new role or aligns it with a higher truth. In this way, the magician's act of chastisement becomes sacramental, a part of the spirit's own evolution. The language of chastisement often includes vivid cosmological imagery. Phrases like "you will be hurled into the abyss" or "your name shall be erased from the heavens" suggest more than suffering. They imply erasure from the cosmic book of life, from memory, from being itself. This reflects a deeper metaphysical fear among ancient peoples, not merely to suffer, but to cease to exist. The magician, by wielding such threats, takes on the role of cosmic arbiter, determining not only the fate of the spirit within the ritual, but its very status in the universal order. The role of chastisement in magical text also intersects with the concept of balance. In a world where spiritual beings are summoned, bound, and commanded, there must be consequences. Without chastisement, there would be no leverage. The spirits might ignore the summoning, or worse, retaliate. Chastisements create the necessary tension that makes spiritual communication possible. There are the dark gravity that holds the right together, ensuring that power flows. They are the dark gravity that holds the right together, ensuring that power flows in the intended direction. The, the compulsion element of a magical rite, particularly in the context of the Greek magical papyri, refer to the techniques and strategies used by the practitioner to forcibly command a spiritual entity to appear, obey, or act in accordance with the ritual's demands. Compulsion is not about inviting or coaxing a spirit through worship or devotion. It is about exercising authority and enforcing compliance through spiritual, cosmic, and often threatening means. In these rites, compulsion operates through several interwoven tools. The first is the invocation of divine names and cosmic forces. The practitioner often calls upon the highest and most secret names of gods or primordial forces, not simply to ask for aid, but to assert alignment with the universal law. The magician is saying, in effect, I speak with the authority of the cosmos. By invoking these names, they create a chain of command in which the summoned spirit is subordinate. The second method of compulsion involves the use of vocus magicae, or magical utterance, that were believed to possess intrinsic power. These were not normal words with lexical meaning, but powerful sounds, often derived from Egyptian and Semitic roots, strung together in a mystical formula. The purpose was to affect the spiritual plane directly, bypassing rational understanding. When spoken with proper timing and tone, these sounds were believed to pressure or even injure spiritual entities until they complied. Symbolic actions also played a role in compulsion, drawing magical circles, burning incense, inscribing names on lead tablets, or holding specific talisman acted as material anchors that bound the spirit to the magician's will. In many cases, these rituals contained threats of suffering if the spirit did not obey. The magician might destroy an effigy bearing the spirit's name, or threaten to erase its memory from the divine order. These were not idle threats. They were understood to carry real metaphysical weight. Compulsion in these rites reflect a profound psychological tactic. By asserting dominance, the magician assumed an elevated spiritual role, becoming a figure of cosmic justice. The very structure of the ritual, beginning with flattery, moving to command, and ending with threats, mirrors a form of negotiation that escalates into ultimatum. The practitioner must project unwavering confidence, for hesitation might embolden the spirit or cause the ritual to fail. Compulsion of magical rites is a deliberate mechanism of control. It enforces the hierarchy between the practitioner and the spiritual world through sacred names, mystical sounds, physical symbols, and psychological assertion. It ensures that the ritual does not depend on the goodwill of the summoned being, but on the practitioner's rightful command over the spiritual order. In the collection of texts known as Greek magical papyri, one particular rite stands out in its elegance, complexity, and mystical potency: the offering to the star of Aphrodite. This ritual encapsulates not only the reverence for a major goddess of antiquity, but also the magical philosophy that bridged devotion and compulsion, the sacred and the strategic. Unlike simple prayers or hymns of praise, this rite is an invocation of cosmic alignment, a performance that places the magician within a celestial framework to gain influence over the realm of love, beauty, and attraction. Aphrodite, known in Roman times as Venus, has long been associated with the planet that bears her name. This connection was not merely poetic, but astronomical and astrological. The planet Venus was visible in the sky as both the morning and evening star, and this dual presence lent Aphrodite a liminal quality. She appeared at transition between day and night, light and darkness. Her influence was believed to be most potent when her star shone brightly. The magicians of late antiquity tailored their rituals to correspond with these celestial appearances. The offering to the star of Aphrodite is structured around this understanding. It begins with an address to the goddess in her cosmic form. She is praised not just as the mother of love or the queen of beauty, but as the radiant one who rides the skies and governs the tides of desire. Her brilliance is noted, her dominance, her dominion over the hearts of men and women is invoked, and her epitaphs are recited in a cascading list meant to appeal to every aspect of her divine power. These praises are not merely poetic, they are calculated recognitions of her influence, designed to establish rapport and receptivity. Yet the magician's relationship with the divine is never passive in these rites. The goal is not simply to bask in the glory of Aphrodite's presence, but to forge a functional link between her celestial force and a specific earthly intent. Thus the rite continues with a series of offerings. These may include incense, wine, honey, or even more esoteric materials such as myrrh or specific gemstones, each chosen for its symbolic resonance with the goddess. The act of giving is deeply symbolic, signifying not only reverence but a kind of spiritual transaction. The magician honors the goddess in a way that opens the channels for divine reciproc- uh, reciprocity, reciprocity, re- reciprocating, basically, reciprocity. This reciprocity is not guaranteed, and that is where the element of compulsion becomes essential. Ancient magicians understood that divine beings, while mighty, were not beyond influence. Through the use of sacred names, chants, and cosmic alignments, the magician could draw down the power of a star or deity and bind it to their purpose. In the offering to the star of Aphrodite, this is most evident in the use of vocus magicae, mystical syllables and names with no conventional meaning, but immense esoteric force. These words are not spoken lightly. They are intoned with ritual precision, often accompanied with gestures, movements, or drawn symbols, each of which contributes to the vibration of the ritual space. The vocus magicae functions as more than sound. They are linguistic vessels of power. Derived in part from Egyptian and Semitic roots, these syllables form a magical language designed to reach across the veil of the mundane and contact the divine directly. By speaking them, the magician is not asking for help, but creating an atmosphere of necessity. The goddess is not merely called, she is compelled. The rite insists on her presence, her attention, and her assistance. This is where the offering crosses from reverence into control. What makes this act acceptable within the magical worldview is the belief that the magician is not violating cosmic order but acting in accordance with it. The magician is not a thief or a blasphemer, but a participant in the divine economy. The gods and spirits have power, but they also have duties and patterns. And the properly prepared magician can tap into those rhythms with the right tools. When the magician offers a gift and speaks the sacred words at the astrologically correct moment, they are not forcing the goddess, but fulfilling a hidden law. Within the rite, the magician often adopts a tone of command in the final section. After the offering has been made and the praise sung, the sacred words spoken, the practitioner does not wait silently. Instead, they make demands. They specify what they want: the return of a lost lover, the conquest of a desired one, the radiance of personal charm, or success in a romantic endeavor. These demands are not made arrogantly, but with conviction. The magician believes that their preparation and alignment have earned the right to speak with authority. The goddess is expected to respond, not because she is a servant, but because the right has been fulfilled. Aphrodite, in this context, becomes more than a mythical figure. She becomes a planetary intelligence, a cosmic presence that shines down with influence and grace, yet one that can be summoned into ritual form. Her star is not just a celestial body, but a gate through which divine energy flows. The magician opens that gate, directs the flow, and seals the working with symbolic actions or words of release. The relationship between the magician and the goddess remains complex. There is admiration, even love, but also strategic engagement. The offering to the star of Aphrodite reveals a world where spiritual forces are part of a dynamic web, not unreachable entities to be worshipped from afar. These forces can be partnered with, honored, and, when necessary, commanded. The ritual also reflects a deeper esoteric philosophy. It embodies the principle of correspondence, that what is above reflects what is below. The brightness of Venus in the sky is mirrored in the warmth of desire in the heart. The movement of the stars are echoed in the motions of the soul. To engage with Aphrodite through the star offering its no through the star offering is to recognize this harmony and to participate in its consciously and recognize this harmony and to participate in it consciously. Okay, I've got tons of freaking noise around me. I probably have a ton of things that were going on there that you could have heard. I apologize for that if you could hear that. Um, I'm checking everything out on see if there's any comments. It doesn't look like there was anything. I am going to go ahead and end this and maybe be able to figure out what's going on with all this stuff going on around me. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, feel free to leave a comment, like, subscribe, share, make comments. I do like to get some feedback and see what you guys think about it, see what you know about it too. That's pretty cool. Um, you can find us on Rumble, Twitch, Kick, X, and YouTube, as well as on DLive. On Rumble and YouTube, we are the Wonderful World of Weirdness. I also have a sister channel, I guess you could call it, on YouTube called Strange Stories. That one is also going to have this video and all of the original raw videos, live streams on there. So feel free to stop by and check it out. I also edit these down into 15-minute videos, which means that this will be seen again later on in shorter time spans. I've found that a lot of people enjoy hearing 15-minute parts rather than going and having to listen to an hour, hour and a half, 3 hour videos, so I've cut it down to a reasonable time where you can get a little bit at a time as you want. So I hope you guys did enjoy. This is another late night. It is 1:31 my time, which means it took me an hour and a half to get this done. So um, I will talk to you guys later, and I hope you have a good night, good morning, good evening, whatever time of the day it is, and I will talk to you later.